Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into beer from a brewer. I'm fairly certain this is the first time I've had one of their beers. It's possible I'm mistaken, but if so, it's been so long that I can't recall it. But nonetheless, we're jumping into a beer by Transient Artisan Ales based in Bridgman, Michigan. Today's beer is called Buckley. It's an Imperial Stout clocking in at 13.5% ABV. This one has added vanilla, Tugboat brand coffee, and Michigan maple syrup. So, big beer. We'll start with the label art. I'm not sure the significance of the name Buckley, but the label art has some character on there that reminds me of a drawing from the book Where the Wild Things Are, Maurice Sendak classic. Yeah, that's kind of what it reminds me of. So I don't know the significance of this drawing or the name Buckley, but nonetheless, that's what's on the label. Very cool art. So we're going to get this cracked gently and poured into our trusty stout glass. Very dark, very thick. Gonna try to give that, without sloshing all over my table, a chance to form a head here. It's very dark, very thick. So we'll slow it down right about there. Make sure I have that interesting label facing you at least. Visually, yep, absolutely pitch black as you'd expect. It is an Imperial Stout after all. I can already get just massive aromas coming off of this beer. Getting it right up over it. Oh yeah. So the maple, the vanilla, and the coffee all really do jump out at you. Yeah, you can pick every bit of that up. Coffee smells really nice. Smells like a darker roast. Yeah, I'm getting a ton of underlying cacao-like aromas off of this, clearly from the malt bill as well. This smells like a big, dark beer. It's got kind of one of these classic additive bills for a big Imperial Stout. And there's a reason that you see these ingredients used often. It's because they just work in the beer style. And of course, they're all a little bit different. So even though, you know, oh, I've had plenty of coffee stouts, or some with maple syrup, some with vanilla. Yeah, of course you have. And you'll continue to do so. But they're all distinctly different, and that's part of the fun for me, is jumping in to different beers from different brewers, especially if it's something that you've had, you know, from somewhere else. So, head formed beautifully. It's still holding nice and creamy on top. Let's just jump right in, give this a whirl. Oh, that's nice. Big, bold flavors. Big, bold flavors. So before we even get into that, and there was a lot to process, it's absolutely delicious, let's talk body and mouthfeel. The mouthfeel has a really nice bit of resistance to it. It's 13.5% ABV. You would probably expect a fair bit of resistance. Yes, it's quite resistant. The body is really only kind of medium heavy. It's not as oppressively weighty as I expected for the style in the ABV range. So, you know, maybe high end of average, low end of above average, but not quite what I expected there. But it's very nice. The added resistance on the mouthfeel does actually add a bit more textural presence to it, so it doesn't feel wrong. It feels right. It's just not quite as heavy. Some people may like that, but it is what it is. Now we get into the flavor profile. This beer did not list lactose, and I 100% believe that to be true because there is no hint of any sweetness in this beer whatsoever. It is very roasty, earthy. There's actually a ton of bitters that come out underneath. In fact, that's kind of the first thing that hit me, was just this wall of roast, followed by bitters, followed by the intensity of that coffee. Never heard of or had Tugboat brand coffee, but man, it is delicious. Absolutely works in this beer. So yeah, just boatloads of coffee. It's very forward. It's a very nice roast to it. Taste not like a French roast style, but it's definitely a darker roast. No question about it. Darker roast on those beans. Really nice, bold, pungent coffee flavor. And what I was smelling with the underlying kind of cacao essences that I suspected were from the malt bill, absolutely accurate, and it's absolutely present. It really works well with that big, bold, dark roast coffee, and then you get these nice, roasty, earthy bitters coming out of it. There's nothing in here that tastes smoky at all. It's just very earthy and very roasty. It's a nice, dark roast. Malt bill in tandem with a nice, dark roast coffee that pairs in there. Now for the maple and the vanilla, equally easy to pick out in this beer. And in fact, I gotta say, that'll lead into the balance, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the fact I can very clearly pick out all the additives as well as this malt bill, job well done, Transient Artisan Ales, job extremely well done. The maple is fantastic. You know, Michigan, that's also in those northern latitudes. Easy to have, that being a country, obviously. I think most people in America would think Vermont if you're thinking American maple, or Canada if you're not thinking American. But yeah, Michigan, of course. You know, it's a northern latitude state. Why not? Can't say as I've ever had, at least to my knowledge, Michigan maple, but very, very nice. The vanilla comes through as well. If anything, I would say of the additives, the vanilla is for sure, to my palate on first sip, the most, I don't want to say subtle because that puts you in mind of thinking it's quite light. It's not. Just comparative to the other additives, the maple and the coffee, it's dialed back just a little bit more. But absolutely fantastic beer on first sip. Let's jump back in, get another sip, let everything re-intensify, make sure I didn't miss anything. Then we will specifically talk about the balance and the finish. Great beer here. Take two. Yeah, really nice. Really nice. It's that bold immediacy of the roasty underpinnings, nice kick of bitters, pretty pronounced for the beer style. It's not often you get a stout that's kind of that forward, but it's this deep, rich, roasted coffee and roasted malt bill underneath. Yeah, and it really just hits you. There's also some kind of subtle underpinnings of nuttiness to it, and it's almost like roasted hazelnut, roasted chestnut. That's not in here, but just this combination of flavors, the way they ebb and flow, moving in and out. There are some kind of nuttier essences popping out of the back of this malt bill as well. Then yeah, it's that immediate maple. The vanilla comes in behind that. And yeah, it's not as up front and center as the coffee, the roasty malt bill underneath it, and the maple, but it's definitely there. It's easy to pick out. Everything has its own voice, nothing vying for attention, and there's just a ton of interweaving of these flavors just coming in and out of one another, and it's very intense. Very, very nice. I gotta say, top-notch balance on this beer. Now, in terms of the finish, this is not a barrel-aged Imperial Stout, so maybe you would suspect, maybe you wouldn't, but it is 13.5%. It's got big, bold, pungent additives, and yes, this does have quite a long finish. It's very wet all the way around. There is a lot of resistance. It's a thicker stout. It feels it, and it really does a great job of coating the flavors on this beer to linger on the palate long, long after each sip. Well in excess of a minute. Well in excess. And you don't get that often, even on Imperial Stouts that have additives, unless it's barrel aged. This beer is accomplishing that same feat without the use of aging in a spirit barrel. So yeah, well done. And they spared no expense with these additives. It's bold. I mean it when I say it. It's a bold intensity of flavor. I absolutely love it. What I'm left with on the back end of the finish is very clearly and distinctly lingering malt bill essence, that roasty edge of the malt bill, and the coffee. That's the two big lingering elements. The vanilla and the maple do disappear, you know, before you're left at the tail end of the finish, and it's still very clear coffee and roasty malt bill. Absolutely fantastic. Guys, I drink a lot of stouts. I drink a lot of stouts that have similar additive ingredient bills. This is one of the best ones that's got kind of this similar lineup I've had in quite a while. I absolutely love this beer. I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, come with my scores. When we come back, we will get this one ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Transient Artisan Ales Buckley, an Imperial Stout clocking in at 13.5% ABV. This one brewed with vanilla, coffee, and Michigan maple syrup. Transient Artisan Ales is based in Bridgman, Michigan. So yeah, guys, this was just another huge stout. Sure, it had additives like many, many stouts I've had before, But this one was very special. I was really, really impressed with how it was put together. The underlying malt bill was rich. The coffee was bold. The malt bill and the coffee in particular went extremely well together. The other additives, the maple and vanilla, all played their part to play. Everything had its own voice. This was just extremely, extremely well done. Not a sweet stout, big, bold, plenty of actually earthy, roasty bitters up front. It was not the norm for a stout of this style with these additives. And I think it was fantastic for that fact. So yeah, similar ingredient lists of many stouts I've had, but this one stands alone on its own. So jumping into the scores, this did extremely well across the board. Only a solitary category where it did not get a perfect score. That was the body. The body on this beer was nice, but for 13.5%, it was nowhere near as weighty as I expected. Really, it was just kind of high end of average. Typically in a big, high ABV craft stout like this, it's going to feel at least high end of medium heavy to heavy. This was really just kind of hovering on that border range of medium to medium heavy. It really wasn't as weighty as I expected. But its counterpart, the mouthfeel, was so thick and viscous that it did kind of offset that. So texturally, it still had really nice presence. But high end of average for the body, it gets a 6 out of 10, which does, of course, leave a perfect 10 out of 10 in the remaining 9 categories. That is aroma, taste, mouthfeel, finish, head and retention, appearance, balance, feeling and intangible. That's my subjective thoughts category. An example of style. So the total score on the Transient Artisan Ales Buckley is a 96 out of 100. Guys, this one really, okay, body, big whoop, who cares? This is a top tier stout. It is what it is. I have to rate objectively based on what I experienced. So yeah, the body didn't quite make it, but I mean, it did not detract from the beer drinking experience at all. This was big, it was bold, it was pungent, flavorful, flavor forward, beer at its best. I absolutely love what they did with this. The balance in particular, you know, I'll always come back to the balance as almost the singular most important category in any beer ranking. Because if the beer is out of balance, it's not really ever going to have a great chance of being a particularly great beer. This was an all-star beer. I absolutely loved it. If you're a fan of these big stouts, and yeah, this was not barrel-aged. There was so much about this that was just impressive. I mean, I would recommend this one all day long. The ingredients list, the underlying base beer itself, everything about this was extremely well thought out, extremely well crafted, and executed marvelously. If you like these big stouts as I do, I suggest you try and find this one. I did get mine from Tavour. Maybe they get some more in the rotation coming up. Possibly check Total Wine. Heck, even look on the brewer's website to see where they distribute. Well worth the effort. A fantastic stout all around. Folks, that is today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit that bell icon. It is right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.